Coffee talk, let's get into it. So today, our focus is going to be on negotiating a salary. I felt like this was a very fitting first coffee talk since what my channel has been about so far has been my experience with Amazon, from interviewing all the way to day one. So with my coffee talks, this is probably the only time there's going to be an alignment like this. They're totally separate experiences. I'm not really going to be intertwining. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking down at my computer screen. I don't really have a crazy setup. My camera is on top of a big wicker basket with a light in front of my face. So we're on a budget. We're on a budget here. Grant is on a budget here. Yeah, so I have 8 tips for negotiating a salary. So tip number 1. So at this point in time, you've gotten an offer and it's a written formal letter that states all of the terms of your offer financially. So that could be composed of your annual salary, that could be composed of a sign-on bonus, that could be certain stocks, that could be bonus percentages throughout the year. You have everything that they have put forth to you written down. So what I'm suggesting is anytime that you get an offer, especially if you feel like the offer that you've gotten is a little bit lower than what you had expected or anticipated, you should definitely negotiate the terms of that agreement. It's not something that's bad to do. It's not something that is frowned upon. It's a professional activity that is usually expected. It does not come as a surprise to HR people when they have someone say that they want to negotiate these terms. You need to know what you're worth, and you need to be, no one else besides yourself is going to advocate for you. I wish I could advocate for you, but nobody is going to besides you. So this is how you get ahead, right? So tip number 1. Ask to negotiate the offer before accepting the terms of the offer. So what I mean by this is, say I just applied to a job and I got an offer and they said they were gonna give me, let's just say $300,000 a year. I get that $300,000 a year. I should not accept that offer and then come back and say, oh, on second thought, I would like to try to get $320,000. No, that's not gonna happen. You've already accepted the agreement. So you need to make sure that you approach your hiring manager or HR person and say something along the lines of, hello, Steve, I'm super excited and optimistic about, having this agreement. Pause. Say something like this. Hello, Steve, I'm super excited at the opportunity to work with this company. It's something that I've been, really trying to do, and I'm really proud of my achievement in this, and I just wanted to express my gratitude. And then I would start another paragraph, and I would say, I would like to discuss the terms of the agreement, specifically the salary, blah, 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 blah. And then you're gonna go into those attributes that are within that offer. And then we're gonna go over some tips. The next tips are gonna be exactly how to construct that conversation and justify that you should be getting that higher level of money. So tip number 2, always negotiate your base salary rather than negotiating things like sign-on bonuses or one-time payments or stocks. Sorry, I just got a YouTube comment email and I will mute my laptop. The reason why I'm saying to negotiate your base salary rather than a sign-on bonus is because let's say that you get a $5,000 sign-on bonus, right? And let's say you're trying to do $100,000 a year. That's what your salary was offered to be. So you have $100,000 a year salary and a $5,000 a year sign-on bonus, or one time. A lot of people might think, wow, I get that sign-on bonus immediately. So therefore, instead of putting $5,000 onto my actual salary, why don't I just put it on my sign-on bonus so I get that right now? The reason why that's not a good idea is because typically when you're in a profession and you start getting promoted, your salary gets adjusted based on a percentage, right? So if you go in and you accept $100,000 and they raise you up 10% that first year, and then you get $110,000, that's great. But if you started at $105,000 and then adjusted from there, you would be making more than $110,000 after your first raise. So not only did you negotiate $5,000 for that first year, but now it's paying itself off again in that second year and so on. So always negotiate a higher base salary than anything else first. I would say base salary, restricted stock unit / stock options, and then sign-on bonus. Sign-on bonus is not the most important thing to consider. So tip number 3. Now you're probably wondering, I want to do this, I'm inspired to do this, I want to negotiate, but I don't really understand how I'm supposed to do that, right? How do I know how to start the conversation, but what do I say to make them think that I am worth asking them for another $5,000 or $10,000 on my salary? Well, look at that. What I've done in the past is I looked at the job description where all the characteristics are listed out and then all the requirements, right? And so what I did was I spent some time doing some self-assessment, and I went on there and I said, for every single one of these desired characteristics, how have I excelled in that and gone above and beyond in my prior positions? And then the same thing for the qualifications. How do I meet and exceed those qualifications? Putting a focus on the ones that you strongly meet or strongly exceed. That way, when you go into your email or your phone conversation with that hiring manager, you can go on there and say, you want someone in this job that has demonstrated over $1 million of savings, has done this many continuous improvement projects, has managed this number of people, and you go in there and you say, I've blown that out of the water, right? So I'm better than your average candidate that should be offered this position. So therefore, I assign a value of at least an extra 5% based on those characteristics. And we're gonna break this down a little bit further as we go on. So that was tip number 3. So tip number 4 is kind of going along what I just said. So I won't spend much time on this tip since it does. But demonstrate how you've already excelled in previous roles by providing examples that illustrate your success, right? So talk about briefly, if it goes into a more substantial conversation, you can mention the different priorities that you had, how you met those priorities. How are you involved outside of your role, right? Are you in affinity groups? Did you take on projects on other teams like engineering or marketing or finance? I guess I have an Amazon package that is delivered, fitting. And then tell them I've done all these things, I've excelled, I've gone above and beyond. So I should have an above and beyond type of salary, right? That all feeds into the justification, and they're gonna love that. Companies love it when they have an employee that comes in that's really engaged and energetic, willing to do things outside of their job role. So take that and actually also do that as well. So that was tip number 4. Tip number 5, this one is something that you've probably already heard and probably considered. It's, consider the cost of living in the location that you're going to be relocating to or just working in if you're already there. The reason why that's important is because if you're taking, some sort of management role that's in the middle of Oklahoma somewhere, as opposed to somewhere like Los Angeles, the cost of living is very substantially different. There are a lot of websites out there where you can go and you can type in your current salary that you make in a specific city, and then what you can do is take that same salary that you're making and say, what if I move to LA? And then it will pop up and say, this is your equivalent income to maintain your current lifestyle. I'll attach a link below or whatever you can do with that so that you can go in there and play around with that and kind of get an idea of what you're supposed to be looking at. So definitely utilize tools like that, and then just say in your conversation like, hey, I'm moving to this area, which is a really above average high cost area. I really think, after researching and looking at the market rate and stuff like that, that I should be getting a little bit more to help out with some of these costs. Totally acceptable thing to ask, right? Advocate for yourself. Nobody else is going to advocate for you. That's tip number 5. Tip number 6. This is a small one. I think people put too much weight on this, but tip number 6 is research the market rate for the position that you're going into in that geographic location. The reason why I'm a little skeptical, but still encourage this one, is because everybody has different qualifications, and just because you have the same job title does not mean that you're contributing the same amount or worth as much. A lot of times companies will assign salaries not exactly dependent on where you are currently, but where they foresee you to go, right? They might be trying to take on talent to put into a specific job that's a little lower level than what they want them to be in, but they think that they have potential to exceed and excel and go on to higher opportunities, so therefore they'll give them a higher salary. So I would be a little bit wary of using those market rate averages, because a lot of times different sources have different numbers, and that hiring manager could go to a source that has a lower estimate and then use that. So I suggest to have that somewhere in your documentation where you're negotiating, but don't put too much weight or emphasis on that. So that brings me to tip number 7 out of 8. Tip number 7 is more of a do not, so it's a don't. So a lot of people try to think like, oh, I'm going to take this offer that I got from this company and I'm gonna pin it against this company that I'm trying to negotiate with and say, well, so-and-so over here is offering me 150 and you're only offering me 130. So can you get to where they are? No. Of course, that's like a total no. Don't ever talk about what other companies are offering you or other people, because that company that just gave you an offer that you're trying to negotiate with can very easily replace you with somebody else that's going to accept the offer that they gave you. So stay away from discussing other offers and other opportunities with different companies, because they'll just say, you know what, there are thousands of people in this country that would love to have this job. We don't want somebody that's trying to make us be guilted or pressured into giving them a higher salary. So that's tip number 7. My final tip number 8, is ask for a slightly higher number than what it is that you're trying to achieve. So if I wanted to make 120, right? If I was going from 110 and I really wanted to be at 120, I would probably go more in the 125, 127 range to pitch to prove my worth, expecting that they would counter offer back something that was a decent amount lower. And that's okay. You know, I think that any respectable company is not going to accept a direct counter offer that a potential employee gives them. They're gonna go a little bit lower because that's just the nature of negotiating. So those are my 8 tips. I listed them all below as well. You know, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, or you have your own tips, this is a collaborative space. So use this coffee talk time to also talk with the other people that are viewing and commenting on this video. People probably have a lot better insight than I do. Everybody has different experiences. So yeah, hopefully I was able to help you or inspire you or motivate you to take advantage of an offer that you just got and go negotiate with it. And until then, until the next coffee talk, I'm gonna call you guys my lazy beans, and I will see you next time.